بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأصلي وأسلم على سيد الأولين والآخرين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. All praise and due to Allah, Lord of the worlds, and peace and blessings be constantly showered upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad, the master of the first and the last, his companions, his family, all those who followed his way and established his sunnah to the day of death. As to what follows, we continue in our study of I'Jaz al-Qur'an. And that is the miraculous nature of the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which was revealed in a way that no other book was. Because the other books were revealed dealing with the issues of the people or the particular tribe. And so therefore, the Sharia, or the laws and lifestyle that came, for instance, to Bani Israel, to the children of Israel, were specifically tailor-made for them. And this does not apply to other people. Although it is a revelation, it was specifically tailor-made for their personality and for the conditions that they were involved in. But the difference, and then all the other prophets who came, and some reports go that there's over 124,000. The lifestyle that they left with their people would be tailor-made for the people in that particular time. The difference was with Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, that he was sent for the whole of humanity and the jinn. And so this Sharia, or this lifestyle, is made in such a way that it has flexibility, that it actually transcends time, and it transcends space, it transcends ethnic differences between people, even linguistic. And that's another amazing thing, because it is revealed in a clear Arabic language, Qur'an Arabiya. It is an Arabic Qur'an. And when it is said that is the Fusha language, that is the clear language that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had revealed, and that is even clearer than the different dialects of Arabic. So this revelation then is a chance for any human being to hear directly from the Creator and to get guidance with their circumstances. We are in the month of February, it's 2018, and one of the big issues facing people and Muslims, but especially people here in the Western countries, is the issue of racism. And that is being challenged by different groups. And so in conjunction with Black History Month, we want to look at the relationship of the Qur'an with the African continent. And again, this is the miraculous level of content and information that is in the book, that can even apply to certain circumstances. And it's not that you're twisting the book around to meet your ends, but it's just that there's so much in the book that there's something there for everybody. And only Allah knows how serious the race issue would be, that the color line instituted in many different countries. And as we had discussed before, not only in Africa, but even in India itself, and in China and other places, the issue of color played a role in terms of class, in terms of how people would be judged. And so therefore the terminology that is used when it says Black History Month, it is actually dealing with people of African descent. Because Africa is a huge continent, so large that you could put China and India right inside of it, and you still have space. So there's a huge continent with people of different colors, different texture of hair, facial features. All of this is within the continent. However, because of the weakness of human beings and the waswisu, whispering of the shaitan, race became a serious issue. And with the Western countries using race as a means of controlling slavery, right? They're using the color line. And they even instituted laws called Code Noir, the black laws, into Western countries where if a person has a certain complexion, then they would be deemed as a slave. And then into the textbooks with history, and then even into religion. And putting it in religion is one of the worst possible things that you can do. And when they put in the image of Jesus Christ, of Isa alayhi salam, as a European man, right? And then taught the people that this is the God or the Son of God. Because in some reports, some sections of Christianity believe that he is the Son of God, and he is coming down to earth to die for the sins of people. Other groupings actually believe that he is God, that God transformed himself into Jesus. And I remember being in Jamaica, and we were there in Dawa living, and we used to cooperate with the Christian groups, and there was a group called Pentecostals. And the Pentecostals were cooperating with us, and they used to lend us these big stoves. And we would use these stoves, you know, for our big gatherings to cook the food and whatnot. And so one day I came along and I saw the Muslim brothers arguing with the Pentecostals about God. They had just probably watched Ahmed Deedat tape, and they were filled with the Deedat system of debate. Right? So they were debating about the concept of Trinity. And the Pentecostal minister came along, and he said to them, "No, you all are confused because we're just like you. We believe in one God. We do not believe in three." So the brothers were then stumped, right? Because this is something different. And when I came along, I thought about it. I just came walking along and I heard it. And I said, "Okay, you say you believe in one God, but who's that God?" They said, "Jesus." You see, so it was Tawheed, right? One. But this is a strange form of Tawheed because you're saying that God is a human being. That's why Tawheed, when you really look at the concept of Tawheed, many scholars break it into sections. You have, you know, Tawheed of lordship. That means there's only one Rabb. That's part of your Tawheed. You have to accept one Lord. If you have another Lord, you broke your Tawheed. Then you have Tawheed al-Asma wa Sifat, that in the names and descriptions of Allah, that Allah has unique descriptions. So if you give those descriptions to another creation, you broke your Tawheed. So in this case, Tawheed al-Asma wa Sifat applies. Because Jesus, as they depicted him, is a man. So a man could not be the creator. Because a man is what they call makhluk. So the makhluk is created, right? And the khaliq, that's what Arabic means, the creator. So the creator cannot be the created. Okay, so this is the concept of Tawheed. And of course, the last part of Tawheed is Tawheed al-Ibadah, and that is that worship has to be only for Allah. So the point is that to deal with the issues of bias and confusion, this month was instituted. And as some of them say, know the past, shape the future, you know, they're looking at the past. Okay? So how does the Qur'an intersect with this search for information about the African continent? And this is real information. It's not fantastic information, superheroes or whatever. But it is real information that we can believe in and is connected to our understanding. So in that light, we want to see how the Qur'an intersects now. And this is where the subject called Asbab al-Nuzul and that is the reasons for the revelation. And it is part of tafsir. They even have a few books written by scholars that are just asbab al-nuzul. But normally you will see it in the tafsir, where they say that this verse was revealed in the Meccan period because of this incident, right? A particular incident. So now, and then it will give you some hadiths or give you a history and explain why the verse was revealed, when it was revealed, and then you can understand it more. Right? So this is asbab al-nuzul. Okay, so the sabab, or the reason for one of the important ones, this is where we see where we start to connect into the African continent. Okay, and that takes us back to the middle of the 5th year after the Prophet. So this is after the Prophet ﷺ was 40, and then 5 years, right? The middle of the 5th year. So it's not after the Hijrah. It's after prophethood. So they're in Mecca, and it's the first section. And at that time, they were suffering because they taught the belief in one God, because the majority of the people who embraced Islam in the early phases were actually coming from the slave class. And if you look at Abu Bakr Siddiq, and then you look at Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah, and you look at some of the great, leading Sahaba. But then you'll see people like Ammar ibn Yasir, and you'll start to see a group of people who were actually in the slave class. So in the early days, the majority of the Muslims were slaves. And again, the slaves could be from any tribe, any color, any particular race. It was somebody who was captured or lost their power, and they had to work for somebody permanently. And they'll make you work according to your skills. So it was during this time period where torture was being used against the Muslims. And it was a horrible situation. The Prophet ﷺ was protected by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through the angel Jibreel, and also his tribe Banu Hashim. So the Banu Hashim protected him. So if the Quraysh were to attack him, then there would be a civil war. So they intensified on his followers. These are people who have no tribe, or they have no one to defend them. And so they could be tortured, humiliated, killed. And we see Sumayya, radiallahu anha, the mother of Ammar, right, the wife of Yasir, the first to give her life. And they were suffering so much that one day the Prophet ﷺ passed them and he said, Sabran ala Yasir, maw'idukum al-jannah. He said, have patience, family of Yasir, because your place is in paradise. So they were promised paradise before their death. And eventually then Sumayya was martyred and became Shaheed, the first in Islam. So this was a horrible period. During this time, Surah Al-Kahf was revealed. Okay, and this is the chapter of the cave. And this is a very important chapter for us. Very important. And it even shows us in the sense that we're living in a type of Meccan period, because we don't have power in the land. We need to make hijrah, migration somewhere. There's no real Islamic state, right? There were false claims. The so-called Muslim countries are not really fully practicing Islam. They have bits of Islam, but there's no real place that's available today. So we're living in a type of Meccan period. So a lot of the rules of the Meccan period apply to us. The rules of the Medina period do not apply to us in many cases. This is why people say, when they say Sharia, right? Sharia law, Sharia law. What's the first thing that comes to their mind when you say Sharia? Yeah, chopping somebody's hand off of their head, right? That's Sharia. But the section of Sharia dealing with punishments, right, which every legal system has, this does not apply unless you have a state. You have to first have a state, and then you have a judge, and then you've established peace in the land, you've established Islam, then the rules apply. It's just like, if, somebody decides to make Salatul Fajr tonight at 9 o'clock, because they don't want to, they're tired. So they decide to make Fajr. Right? He just prayed 2 rakats. That was not Fajr. Because the time of the Salat did not come in. And one of the conditions of the prayer is dukhul al-waqt. That means prayer is in. So one of the conditions of the punishment sections of Sharia law is an Islamic society. And this is good to know, because somebody might ask you, right? Do you believe in punishing everybody? So we say no. It doesn't apply to us, right? Because if somebody drinks alcohol, right, we're supposed, and over again, we're supposed to give them lashes, right? So if we had to lash everyone in Toronto who drank alcohol, we'd have to lash, 60% of the city or something like this. That's insane. It's the culture, right? It does not apply, to a situation like this, which does not make alcohol permissible for us. Because personally, the Sharia law does apply to you, right? But it did not apply to a society where you do the laws, right? So Surah Al-Kahf is revealed. And this is a picture of what is believed to be the cave. Now there's a few of these places. This one is in Jordan. There's one in Palestine. The Turks say they have one. Whatever. There's a few people who say they have these caves. But many historians believe that this one appears to be the most authentic cave. And I took this picture myself. We had taken a group from Cape Town there to visit. And so this is actually what it looks like. And when you go inside, this is what, these are some of the people that are in our group. Right, so this is what you see inside the cave. Right, so they've put some ceiling in it and everything. And then there's a section now that they believe to be, the original place where they're buried. And there's a hole there. So I took a picture of my camera down into the hole, right? Right, so this is, so that's the hole from the outside. And then there's bones in there. There's human bones inside the hole.
So why the bones? Did they leave one body?
Of course, the issue of the cave is a long time ago. Compared to the cave. So Allah knows best what actually happened. There are some stories that the companions of the cave, and I'll go into more details, but when they eventually went back to the cave, and they were eventually buried in the cave. So, but is that their bones or not? I don't know. It could be somebody else's bones. They just threw them down in the hole. So we don't know for sure. But it's an interesting visit, though, to have, especially if you look down in that hole and you see bones, right? And you start to read the story of Ashab al-Kahf. Okay? So this is the sign that they have. The cave of the 7 sleepers. Now they also call it Byzantine tombs, mentioned in the Qur'an itself, because there is a story the Christians have of the 7 sleepers. So they have a story. Ephesus or something was his name, the king, and then around 250 AD, when the Byzantine Romans, the story of that he was a terrible oppressor. And trying to enforce on the people belief in many gods. Remember the council, they had all types of Christians there. Council of Nicaea was 325, so it would not be, it was before that. But he was a pagan, believing in many gods. And they believed in one God. So they escaped with their religion. Okay? So this is the companions of the cave. And they ran away and they fled and they hid inside the cave. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put them into a sleep. And they slept. And surprisingly enough, and this is now the miracle of the Qur'an, it is saying like their bodies, the angels, the bodies were moved around. It said they were moved. And like physically speaking, if a person's laying down there without movement, right, it's going to seriously affect them, maybe paralyzed. So the bodies were moved around, and miraculously they were fed. And so when they woke up, they were hungry. After 309 years, you have a serious hunger. Right? So they were hungry, and they sent one of them out to get some food. And he had the coins of the Romans. If we go by their story, 250. So it's much later now. And he had Roman coins. And when he went to the store, then the person said in words like, "Where'd you get these coins from?" Because if you see somebody bringing coins, here, that Jacques Cartier, first brought over in Canada or something like that, people would say like, "Where'd you get this coin from? This thing's worth like, $1 million or something." So, they said, "I just want to buy something." And then he realized we're in a different time period. Now, this is a miraculous thing. We have a lot of fantastic stories about time travel. Anyway, so our younger generation knows to have time travelers, whatever, in their fantasy book. But this is now real information. They had lived this long, and confusion came up. They had to really, they had to hide. Because some people want to worship them and everything and build temples. These are like gods, right? Anybody who can live that long must be a god. The key point for us here is that the youth migrated for their religion. Okay? That's the theme of the chapter. See, migration, right? It's a migration chapter. You move with your religion. Okay? Then we also have in this chapter, we have the story of Musa alayhi salam. And Musa, as you know, in some discussions, some reports, he wanted to know, is there somebody more knowledgeable than me? I'm getting the revelation. Is there somebody else? And so he was directed through the angel to go to a place of a juncture between two seas. So he had to travel to this place. And he traveled. Now, where this Majma al-Bahrain, where the juncture is, Allah knows best. But it could be where the Mediterranean meets the Red Sea. But it's two bodies of water. And so when he went there then, he came in contact with a mysterious person who's known as Al-Khidr or whatever. But Al-Khidr then took Musa with him and basically told him that, you can travel with me. Yeah, you can travel with me. However, you need to have patience. If you're going to travel with me, you need to have patience. And that for Musa was almost like an insult because he's getting revelation, right? So like, what do you know that I don't know? But this shows you that sometimes book knowledge is not all the knowledge. Because you can memorize things, you know the law, but how do you apply the law? That requires wisdom. Okay, wisdom. And so like Luqman, radiallahu anh, the great wise man, Al-Khidr is another one of these people, not prophets, but they're blessed with wisdom. And as you know, we don't have the time to go into all the details, but as they were traveling, they were on a boat, and then he took a plank out of the boat, and he made it unseaworthy. And Musa was saying like, "Why are you doing something like this? You're ruining the people's boat." And then he said like, "See, you don't have patience. You don't know." And then they met a boy there, and then whatever, and then he killed the boy. And Musa said like, "This is murder. Like, why do you do that?" And then they found a wall that was breaking down, and whatever, and then he built up the wall, and so finally, he explained to Musa, that there were oppressors, who would sink all the boats, and he was helping the people by making their boat unworthy. the boy was a little shaitan, and he was going to ruin the life of his parents. So he was ordered for that boy to die. And then finally, he built the wall to cover a treasure that some orphans had. He was protected. And this is deeper knowledge because he knew the circumstances around him. So he had deep knowledge. Musa's just judging on what they call dhahir. So this is how some people break knowledge. They say dhahir or zahir and batin. So they say there's exterior knowledge and then there's interior knowledge. Now the people who claim tasawwuf, the Sufis, right, they claim that they have the internal knowledge. And that the ulama have external knowledge. But the rebuttal to that is, the Prophet ﷺ and his companions, they had both. They didn't break themselves into groups, right? One is internal, one is external. You have both. And that's what you're supposed to have. You're supposed to have external knowledge. You know your fiqh, you know your sharia, but you also have spirituality. You have dhikrullah, right? That's the way Islam's supposed to be, right? And the point is, though, this Majma al-Bahrain, could be, Allah knows best. I don't know if there's an area where it could be, but somewhere, some bodies of water, is it by some waters near Al-Aqaba? See where Jordan is? Is it near Al-Aqaba and the main Red Sea? Or what it is? But somewhere, it seems somewhere around that Sinai, this area, something like that, it could have been. And again, that's, dealing with, you're in Africa now. Right? If you go by these terminologies of Africa, Asia, type of things. Okay? The last person was the great king Dhul Qarnayn. And Dhul Qarnayn traveled through the land, forbidding evil, calling to the good and forbidding evil. Again, travel, right? Movement. So all of these main stories are based on movement, haraka, hijrah, right? And Dhul Qarnayn, of course, went high into the mountains where it is. Some say it could be the Black Sea area. Over past the Black Sea, there's mountains up in there. Maybe it's there, or it could even be the Himalayas. He reached the Himalayas and went up on the Himalayas. But anyhow, he went up into a mountain that was so far away and so deep that there was valleys that nobody had been in. And there were people there who spoke languages. You need like 26 translators to understand their language. And they were a strange, group of people. And they were talking about another group coming over and slaughtering everybody. So Dhul Qarnayn then, got some iron and whatever, he melted it, mixed it with metals, he built a set, a big wall, a dam. So he blocked off the area. And Ya'juj and Ma'juj are supposed to come back before the day of resurrection. Okay? But the point is, with these three stories now, this is your Qur'an now. Remember the content in the Qur'an. Look at the stories that's coming now. So just think about the Prophet ﷺ who had never been out of Arabian Peninsula, knowing all these stories. Okay, look at the content now you're getting here. Right? And this Gog and Magog and how it applies to us. And these things in Surah Al-Kahf. Right? This is a heavy chapter for us. That you go in. The point is, by the time the end of the year came, and the Quran was saying, hijrah, 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 he then said to his followers, go. Where did he send them? He sent them to Africa. Okay, so now you see the Red Sea area, and where Jeddah is, and then you go, there's Port Sudan, and you go a little bit lower, Massawa, Eritrea, right, Asmara, and then up into the hills. So it's somewhere around the Massawa area, along that coast that their boats came, and they went in there. Okay? And this was the 5th year, near the end of the 5th year. And the Prophet ﷺ said to them, لو خرجتم إلى أرض الحبشة فإن بها ملكا لا يظلم عنده أحد وهي أرض الصدق حتى يجعل الله لكم فرجا مما أنتم فيه. So he said that, if you go to Al-Habasha, Abyssinia, which at that time was the Aksumite Empire, which included Eritrea and parts of Ethiopia, it would be better for you, for in it there is a king who will not tolerate oppression. It is a land of truth. Okay? So go until such times as Allah shall relieve you. So this is now African continent. That's interaction with Africa now. Moving. And the king, his title was An-Najashi, but his name was Ashama. So there are a lot of Najashis, just like Caesar. Julius Caesar, Augustus Caesar, whatever. Caesar just means emperor. So his name was Ashama. And his empire was the empire of Axum. And Axum still is a city there in Ethiopia today. That's what it looks like. It's high in the mountains of Ethiopia. It still has obelisks that are there. It still has obelisks. If any of you would like to see it in a movie form, you can go online, put my name in, and put Untold Ethiopia. You can Google it. You can download a documentary film. Because we took a film crew into Ethiopia, and we made some films, and it was shown 12 times in South African television. So you can see Ethiopia. What's important to us is that these first Muhajirin that went included Uthman ibn Affan and Ruqayya bint Muhammad. These are important people. High-level delegation went over there. And the Quraysh wanted revenge. They wanted to bring them back. And they had diplomatic relationships with the Ethiopian kings. And so they sent Amr ibn al-As and Abdullah ibn Abi Rabi'a to bring them back. And they're high in the Tigray highlands. These are the people who are ruling Ethiopia now, the Tigray people. So they're high in the Tigray highlands. Okay, and they tried to bribe Najashi. This is the typical thing. Now, this is your African king now. He's a Christian and he's an African. So what would you say? What would Trump say today? He's a thug, right? So he's definitely going to take a bribe. Right? You got to put the money under the table, you got it. That's what Trump would say. Okay? But the reality is that he was a just person and he summoned the Muslims to the court. Now, this is where the Qur'an comes in now. You see people who live by the Qur'an, and you see a story where the Qur'an is used. Okay, so that's the usage of it by the companions. Remember the flexibility of its meaning, right? So you're in a circumstance now where you've got a Christian king, and you got polytheists, right? You're a Muslim. What did they do? They went to Surah Maryam. In that chapter, where it talks about the story of Zachariah and Yahya and Maryam, may Allah be pleased with them. It shows, the life and the beautiful story of Maryam, in her pregnancy and going to the date palm and shaking it, Rutab and Janiyah, these ripe dates coming down. Beautiful story. And because the Ethiopian languages are Semitic in their base, they can get the feeling of it, right? And most of them, in their courts, they could speak Arabic as second language. Right, so they get the feeling of it right away. And so they start crying. Because the only thing they had left of their book was in Greek. Right, they didn't have the original Bible. So they only had Greek writings. And Greek is far cry from Semitic. Total different language. So now you're hearing something about the beautiful story of the people who they respect and admire, right? And it is done in a language that they could understand. So the Prophet ﷺ then Najashi said, you're free. There's no difference between us, you're free. And a letter was sent to Najashi. Okay, so this is another interaction, right? The Quran is now the basis of this stuff, right? Because the reason why they're there is Surah Al-Kahf. You see it? The thing that saved them was Surah Maryam. You see how the Quran is intersecting now with African history, right? Because this is solid African history. Axum is an empire everybody knows about. So the letter then, and this is a copy of the original letter. It's in the Topkapi Museum in Istanbul. Right? And the letter is saying, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, Muhammad, the Messenger of Allah, to Najashi, Ashama, Emperor of Al-Habasha. Peace be upon he who follows the guidance. As to what follows, Verily for you I praise Allah, the one whom there is no deity except Him, the sole King, the Holy, the source of peace, the protector and the guardian. Now this is a prophetic way of dialogue with Christian, because he starts off by giving the names of Allah. Because now when you talk in terms of the names of God, right, anybody who believes in God can now start to relate to. So look at the names that he's using, right? And beautiful way of describing it. Then he continued. He wants to relate to the Christian now. And he said, I bear witness that Jesus, the son of Maryam, is the spirit belonging to Allah and his word, which he cast into the chaste and excellent Virgin Mary. She thus became pregnant by means of his spirit and his inspiration with Jesus, in the same manner that he created Adam with his hand. Okay? So now, he says, I believe in Mary, Jesus, right? He's born without a father, but he was created like Adam. Adam is created with no mother, right? So here is your explanation, right? Then he says, verily, I invite you to Allah, the one who has no partner, and to friendship and allegiance and obedience to him. Verily, I invite you and your armed forces to Allah Most High. Thus I have delivered the message and given you counsel. Therefore accept my counsel. Peace be upon you who follows the guidance. Okay? So that's a basic translation of the letter sent to Najashi. Najashi embraced Islam. Okay? And he died as a Muslim. Now the Muslim stayed. There was a civil war. Najashi was victorious. They were trying to take him out. He was victorious. Then the big call came for the hijrah to Medina. And so they left and went to Medina, right? And then in Medina, the Prophet ﷺ, lined the companions up, and janazah prayer was made. And this is janazah al-ghaib, for an absent person. So this is the first time janazah is made for an absent person. And we do that now as well. But really, it's supposed to be done for somebody who has no Muslims around. Because Najashi basically embraced, but he didn't, he kept it to himself. So, the Sahaba knew, the Prophet knew, but he didn't make it public. So therefore, if somebody dies, in your family, or say a famous scholar dies or whatever, so we make an extra prayer for him. That's just extra. That's not janazah al-ghaib. Janazah al-ghaib is if somebody now goes north and they're way up in the Arctic Circle by themselves, whatever, and they vanish. Or they go in an area there's no Muslims and they died. Nobody there to make janazah. Then it is a legal thing. We have to do this. And we will line up and do janazah prayer for that person, who didn't have somebody for them. This is how it began. So the key issue here that we're making, and this is a key point in your discussion with people who are talking about what do Muslims have to do with Africa, right, is that the first Muslims who went there went as refugees, number one, not as conquerors, okay? And they were embraced by a Christian king, you see? Now, there was some discussion amongst some of the companions about what had happened. And it is reported by many Mufassirin that in Surah Ali Imran, verse 199 was revealed. So this is now the Qur'an interacting with a situation in Africa, right? You see it? And it is saying, وَإِنَّ مِنْ أَهْلِ الْكِتَابِ لَمَنْ يُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ وَمَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْكُمْ وَمَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْهِمْ خَاشِئِينَ لِلَّهِ لَا يَشْتَرُونَ بِآيَاتِ اللَّهِ ثَمَنًا قَلِيلًا أُولَٰئِكَ لَهُمْ أَجْرُهُمْ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ سَرِيعُ الْحِسَابِ. So it's saying here, and indeed, among the people of the book are those who believe in Allah and what was revealed to you, and what was revealed to them, humbly submissive to Allah. They do not exchange the verses of Allah for a little price. Those, for them, their reward is with their Lord. Indeed, Allah is swift in taking account. So many Mufassirin say that this verse here was revealed for Najashi. So this is now a verse interacting with an African king, right, which is revealed for him. And again, it is showing that these are the people of the book. They believe in Allah, right, and they accept what was revealed to you and to them. They accept it. And they're humble, right? There's humility. And they submit to Allah. So this person, this is a high description of this person. And this is a beautiful description of Najashi, who is one of the great heroes within Islamic history. Okay, and so this is again how the interaction is, and this is how the Qur'an, in its flexibility of meaning, right? How it actually applies to a circumstance such as this. Okay, and this is Masjid Najashi. Okay, so after you visit Mecca, Medina, Jerusalem, it is better to visit here than Disneyland, or, Vancouver or whatever. This is a place to visit. And Ethiopia is one of the hubs. Addis Ababa is one of the main airports in Africa. Okay, and the Turkish government now, the Diyanet of the Turkish government, along through the Muslims, went to this area, and they revamped the whole area. And from what I understand, they even set up places for visitors where they can stay, and they did the masjid over. So that it would be, a proper place, because it's like 15 Sahabas buried there, along with Najashi. So the Turkish government has just finished this project. So this is a place that can be visited, direct flights to Addis Ababa, and then Mekelle, and then you drive up. A couple hours, you're there in the town of Negash. They call it Negash. Okay? And this is the symbol of Negash that they have there. And you see the noon, those of you who read Arabic, right? Everybody knows. See the noon, that little house there? That's the dot in the noon. Right? And then see here on the bottom, that's your Jeen. Najashi. See the Sheen? Najashi. You see it? And then this writing on the left, this is Ge'ez. So this is the way Ethiopians write their languages. They use Ge'ez.
How do you pronounce that? How do you spell that?
Ge'ez, it's G-E''E''Z. And so this is now like, it's again, Amharic, and these languages are Semitic languages. So if you go back and see ancient Hebrew and look at the early Arabic, right? So this is one of the early languages. This Ge'ez, it may not be this exact form, but this is the one that dates back to the early times. And Ethiopians have stubbornly maintained their language, right? And that although, of course, they have to learn Latin letters. That's an important thing, because what they try to do in Muslim countries is take the Arabic out of your writing, right? That's what they did to the Turks. Mustafa Ataturk. He said, no more Arabic writing for Turkish. You do like the Latin letters like everybody else. Urdu itself is a camp language, right? But did they have people who wanted to stop the writing of Urdu like that?
No.
Because I guess anyhow they broke away from India. Whatever, so. But
yeah, it's pretty popular though.
Yeah.
So in India it's popular.
But Swahili, they did it. They stopped writing it in Arabic. And they write it with Latin letters. So many of the Muslim languages, they did that. And they used to write even dialects of the Indonesian language in Arabic. Right? So Ethiopians stubbornly hung on to their language.
Same the Iranians too.
Yeah, Iranians stubbornly hung on to the language. And this is an important psychological thing. Because if you can read those letters, right, then you already have access to read the Qur'an, to read the Hadith. You're already halfway there. Take that away. And now the person's got a lot of problems now. You got to make a transition to be able to read the Arabic letters. Now, so the floor is open for any questions that anybody has concerning this. Okay, so this is the interaction now of of the Qur'an.
Who took away the language? The Europeans? The alphabet, sorry.
Yeah, so I mean, it depends on which country. The Swahilis were conquered, by the British, so they stopped them. The Turks, it's a long story about Turkey, and but they had an internal struggle between Turks, and they were surrounded by the Russians, and the whole world was against them, and they defended themselves. And unfortunately, there was a conspiracy. Many of the Arab countries turned against them. They turned on them, and they went with the British. So they felt really hurt. And Ataturk came, who was a hero who fought against the Europeans when they attacked them. But somehow there's a lot of stories about him. This guy might have been connected to the Zionists or whatever, I don't know. There's some strange stories about him. Because he even said the fez, like this I'm wearing here, but there's a little higher. The fez was banned. The headscarf also banned. Right, so you all got to wear caps.
You're wearing costumes.
Right, so you got to wear caps. They did this, the secularists. And now we have a struggle in our own Muslim community here, the secularists, right? Secularists can be very, very seriously against Islam, right? And they look like you and sound like you and everything, but they're working hard against Islam to be installed. So it was the Turks themselves that did this. Unfortunately, it was a conspiracy against them. They fought, but they're very stubborn people. They really, really didn't want to do it. Nobody was going to stop them.
So it was imposed on them because there was a condition of accepting the European and their culture.
Right.
So he agreed to that.
Yeah.
Impose all those conditions.
And see, one of the problems that they faced, a weakness that they had, was that when the Turkish nation was first coming out, after Osman and when they first established, they looked toward Europe. Their whole struggle was in Europe. It wasn't until later on that they looked to the rest of the Muslims. So somehow, because they integrated with a lot of Eastern Europeans and everything, they somehow saw themselves as European. It's a psychological problem, right? Are you a European or are you Asian? Or African? Or Arab? Somehow a lot of them, they did mix a lot. A lot of their territories was in Europe. So it was easier to get that across. Because a lot of them liked European culture. But alhamdulillah, now there's a resurgence, they're going back. So now we're moving back to their culture now. And it's a big move. When Erdogan's wife came wearing a hijab, that's a big move. It's a big move. And they're teaching, Islam in the schools, whatever. It's but you can see the struggle that's going on.
He is very good reciting too.
Yeah, he's Hafiz. And there's a brother that I met this weekend, and he had gone to Turkey with a group, and they visited Erdogan's place, this big palace that he has, or whatever he has. All the people who work in his staff and work all around, they're all Hafiz. He wants only a Hafiz to be working in his area, which is, that's different. Some of our other leaders.
All of these European countries, when they basically ask them to change their culture,
Yes.
they